Welcome to Nacho Fitness Coach,
the podcast where fitness is technically the topic, but let's be honest, we get distracted.
I'm Sarah, the fitness expert who actually understands this stuff.
And I'm Kaylee, the beginner who thinks Bulgarian split squats are a hate crime.
Every week, we break down fitness myths, call out internet nonsense, and try to make sense of the chaos.
While also going off on tangents, making bad jokes, and questioning our life choices.
If you're looking for expert advice with a side of whatever Kaylee does here,
or just need a podcast that makes you feel better about your own fitness journey,
you're in the right place.
All right, let's do this. Or, talk about doing this.
So Kaylee, what do you like to listen to when you work out?
I don't know. Sometimes a podcast and sometimes music.
Hey, wait. This is a podcast. What if you could have both?
At the same time?
Oh, yeah. Podbeat is a free mobile app that lets you add any beat style to any podcast for your workout. It's easy to do and free to download in the App Store. Kaylee, you sound pretty cool with the trap beat, but Sarah, the funk beat works for your voice.
So if you want to make our podcast work for a workout, check it out in the App Store.
They even have Podbeat for Android users in the Google Play Store. Okay, on to the show. Welcome back to Nacho Fitness Coach, the podcast where we take fitness seriously, but not ourselves. Today, we're going to talk about transformation, real lasting change that goes beyond just weight loss. Our guest, Neal Bendesky, also known as the 199 guy, has been through an incredible journey of ups, downs, and everything in between. He's lost over 260 pounds, faced major health challenges, including a heart attack and cancer, and completely redefined his approach to fitness and wellness. But he didn't stop there. Neal has since completed 37 races, proving that transformation isn't just about weight loss, it's about pushing limits, setting new goals, and finding what truly makes you feel strong. Now he's a media ambassador, wellness coach, and speaker, sharing his story to help others take control of their health in a way that actually lasts. We're excited to dive into his journey, the lessons he's learned, and what transformation really looks like. Welcome to the show, Neal.
Yay. Hi, Neal.
Hey, it's great to see you both.
Yeah, we got the 199 guy here.
Kaylee.
Yeah.
Well, I'm hanging out in Arizona. The weather is nice today, and I got to do an Orange Theory fitness workout earlier today, and just hanging out with you in the evening, and couldn't be better.
Awesome.
Yeah, we love it. We're super excited to talk to you. I mean, that's an impressive number. I mean, to have 199 lost, right? I mean, so you used to be fat, now you're not. And you've had quite the journey in between.
People ask me, because I'm a sports marketing executive. I had some great runs. I was the vice president of the Heat, that kind of position with Florida Marlins, now the Miami Marlins, and assistant AD at the University of Miami, where I won national championships. Okay, those are all great things. Yeah. But when you're sitting at a desk, so this is not just person in sports, but when you're sitting at a desk and you're working and you're trying to make a difference for your career, right? And, whether you're 20 years old or in my case, 67 years young, either way, you're sitting at that desk. And what happens? Fan food, which you go to a stadium for, is not fuel food. And ultimately, I would eat the free pizza. I would eat the hamburgers. I would eat the cheeseburgers. And all of a sudden, I was 450 pounds. Let me just say that one more time. 450 pounds, right? Yeah. I was on a podcast last week, and the gentleman said, HR can't really say this to you, but when you walk in and you're over 400 pounds, how does that look? And I said, listen, I work for the Miami Heat. Can you imagine going into Pat Riley's office with his Armani suit, right?
Right. Right.
And have that situation. But in all due respect, I went through a space where, I was pretty low, pretty low. But I learned that if you have a community of love and support, you can go a long way, whether it's, in my case, Orange Theory Fitness or a gym, whatever it is. So, thank you for having me on your show. I'm here to talk about what you said, transformation, and how it is realistic. Because, truthfully, I shouldn't be here. I should not be here. I had the Widowmaker, on August 2nd, 2016, after I'd lost a lot of weight. My cardiologist said, Neal, if you didn't do your wellness program, you wouldn't be here. And, like so many people that are listening to your very good podcast, in all due respect, you start the new year and you say, oh, I'm gonna, have that New Year's resolution.
Yeah.
And a lot of the people say, oh, I'll wait till after the holidays.
Yeah.
And the average person gains 15 pounds during the holidays, right? So then you get into this thing the second week and you go to the gym and 80% of the people stop.
Mm-hmm. I think there's even an official day for it. Like I learned about this year. It's like a National Quitters Day. It's like a couple weeks into January.
I saw that. And I think there was a commercial for one of the watches I wear.
Yeah.
Garmin, but Apple, talking about your goals. I thought that was a great commercial.
Yep.
So, okay, we're definitely going to talk about transformation because you hit kind of like that 450 mark. You're like, I need to make some changes. But what was the journey before that? I mean, it was the stadium food, you were around that, but like, how long did it take for you to get to that weight? Like, did it happen over the course of years? Was it a few decades? What did that look like up until the transformation point?
So I have 3 stages. Good question, by the way. The first stage was when I was with the Marlins. The owner, Wayne Huizinga, had our president, Don Smiley, come to me and said, hey, Mr. H really would like to see you alive, right? Here I am working for the Florida Marlins at the time. And he says, why don't you go to Duke and go do the rice diet, right? I go, no, that's not a lifestyle. So I went to Ohio University. Our trainer turned me on to a couple up there. Margie was an nutritionalist, and her husband was, an exercise physiologist. And the truth is that I did it, but I'm a binge eater. So I was failing, right? And then I end up, my second thing, I come here in Arizona. And, a lot of times people think, okay, Neal, you're in sports, right? You worked for, great places and promoted some cool people. But at the end of the day, it wasn't a sports thing that changed me. Have you ever seen Jeff, the actor Jeff Bridges, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he was in a country western movie where he was at the end of his career, similar to me in a situation, because people write you off when you're over 400 pounds and you're over 50 years old, right? And my wife's heartthrob, Colin Farrell, right?
Sure.
Was in this movie. Okay. And right? And
yeah, absolutely.
So I think the movie was called Crazy Heart. So there were so many parallels. So the first thing that I share with your audience is, as I'm progressing in my second phase, which is the one I'm talking about right now, is that something motivates you, something turns into a pivot point, right? And so that this movie comes along, and his name is Bad Blake, and he's an alcoholic. I'm a binge eater, okay? He was 57 in the movie. I was 57. He wrote a song for Colin Farrell that became very successful. I wrote a plan to help me learn nutrition. And then finally, he was performing as a warm-up in Phoenix. Where do I live? Phoenix, Arizona. So I remember at the end to the second phase where he goes to his manager to collect his royalty check from, doing a good job, like I told you. And what does he do? He tells the manager, I told you there's still gas in the tank. So I kind of had this, scenario. So then recently, over 18 months, I ended up getting cancer, prostate cancer. And, the radiation wasn't the issue as much as the side effects. So the hormonal shot caused a 50-pound weight gain. Before that, I got COVID before I was running one of my races. And I appreciate you mentioned that earlier, because it's about inspiring people and it's about finish lines, not finish times. And we'll talk about that later. But at the end of the day, okay, here I am, I've gained 70 pounds. This great journey that I've been on. I've learned all these things. I'm doing all these different things. I got into I know you guys were talking about Harvard a couple episodes ago. Mm-hmm. I went into the Hopkins FODMAP program, and I learned about the foods that at my age that I could eat and not eat. My son, Justin, helped me with that, and that was very appreciated. Big picture is, now I tell people I want to be the Muhammad Ali of weight loss. This is my third time, right? So I started mid-November, and I've lost 36 pounds.
Awesome.
So making progress. I ran my first race in over a year in Arizona here, the 5K, And then this past weekend on the Strip in Vegas, right?
Awesome.
I got to run a 10K. So that was pretty cool.
Awesome. Yeah, I've actually done several of those rock and roll marathons and like rock and roll kind of themed events. And those are just so fun. They're in great destinations. They're just they're a great goal if you're looking for a good race goal.
I'll take your word for it.
Need to, well, Sarah, and congratulations for that. You know, in all due respect, when you think about that, okay, people celebrate their new, better lifestyles.
Yep.
You know, it's like I tell people when they ask me for help, I say, I just want to tell you right off the bat, I'm not into the D word, right? Because diets to me aren't what this is about.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and so you learn every day, you know, especially as you get a little older, you know, you kind of realize that you can't just eat what you used to eat.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
You know, and you just reach that point. So
yeah.
And you got to move too. You know that you can move. That was I think the biggest eye opener for me when I did my first road race was how normal everyone is. You know, I feel like when you get these ideas of like 5, 10K, half marathon, full marathon, if you've seen clips online or whatever, you know, you always see the winner crossing the finish line. And the biggest like reality moment, I guess, for me when I did my first race was 80% of the people are just like you said, it's finish line, not finish time. Mm-hmm. They've been doing it just for fun, like part of a goal or just, you know, a checkbox or whatever.
Well, like that time you and I ran that.
We actually ran that one though.
It was the half marathon relay, which you did not run. I did run most of it.
I walked it.
They were literally taking down the flags as because Sarah ran the second leg and they were taking down the flags, but it was fun.
We finished.
It was a thing that we did, and I was proud of us. It
was a morning out, and it was something to do. And you know, races are very infectious. Like when you get up and go in the morning, a lot of them might start around sunrise or just early in the day, and everyone's happy to be there because they're so excited. You know, and you're moving and you're out in the fresh air, and especially if you do like a destination race. Some of these rock and roll ones, you know, you travel to a city, you get all of the hoopla around that.
Yeah.
But then, you know, people showcase their cities with their race routes, you know, and so you get to see like the best of the best. I feel like when we've done ones out of town, I'm like, this is the best parts of the city, and you're not in a car. So you're slowing down, you know. I mean, I'm a race walker is what I consider myself. And so it's like,
Me too. I'm a speed runner.
Yeah. And I'm just like, you know, you just get to enjoy it and you start actually paying attention to, you know, the architecture, and they're taking you through the heart of their city. Yeah. And it's kind of a fun little thing to do.
Well, there's a lot of worse things you could be doing.
There's a lot of worse things you can do. Yeah, absolutely.
So I have to tell you both because I prepared something. I was hoping you were going to go in this direction. So in all the races, and yeah, you mentioned some really cool places that rock and roll's in. You know, I was just in Vegas and here in Arizona and San Diego is one of them. And then they have one, which is too hilly for me in Nashville, right? Right. But
okay. So with that, we're going to take just a quick little ad break.
For more content, follow us on TikTok at Nacho Fitness Coach.
All right. We're back. And
the one that I really cherish was in Missoula, Montana. Okay. It's a top 100. And the community gets behind it. So here's the story. So you go to the high school, and it's maybe 3,000 or 4,000 people. So it's not like the 27,000 that I just spent the weekend with. So or Sunday afternoon or evening with. So I go there, and they shoot the fireworks off. And the first 3 miles, you know, it's a beautiful area. You're going down like a park creek, and then you make a right-hand turn in a farm. And there's a guy in a tuxedo with a candelabra on his piano playing, right? And then I got through the 4th mile, and there's this mother with like 4 of her daughters. And the way the community would do it is they had the orange cones, right? Yep. So, you know, that one side of the street was for the traffic and one side was for us. And then they would have those old type, what do you call it, water sprinklers that would shoot over. It wasn't great for my sunglasses, but, you know, that's what we did, right? But there was this 8-year-old that she was going in and out of the orange cones, right? I followed her. I thought that was just fun.
That's awesome.
You know? And yeah, you know, so, you know, here's a mom, you know, running with her kids. I always just tell people, although it didn't work out that way, although our older son, Justin, who's 29 today, by the way, he's in New York. He's actually going to see Wicked.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, him and his girlfriend, Sarah, are pretty fired up about it. But anyway, when you really think about those types of things, I wanted to run with my son, right?
Yeah.
And I couldn't walk around the block in 2013.
Yeah,
right.
I'm over 400 pounds, you know, let alone, you know, running. And then I was fortunate. I'm a big guy. You know, listen, I tell people I was fat. I'm just less fat. Okay. And I mean that in a way that I'm living. I'm here, you know, and I'm thankful for that. And I'm thankful that, you know, my wife of over 40 years, you know, we can enjoy our two sons. You know, one is actually in Paris studying the fragrances. You know, he took his organic chemistry and French double major and is in his second year of grad school there. But so you celebrate those things.
Yep.
10 becomes 20, 30 becomes 40, 40 becomes 50. And then what happens? You can't enjoy the life.
Right.
You ladies are, you know, not at that age yet. But when you get over 60, you start thinking, God, I want to be the CEO. And it's my book. I call it CEO Cornerstone. You want to be the CEO of your family, right? You want to spend time with them. You want to enjoy better nutrition with them. You want to go to parks with them. You know, you want to be active. Like you said, Sarah, you want to move.
Yep.
And I couldn't do that before, and now I can.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, I take sincere pleasure that when my 8-year-old is like, Mom, you want to race to that point? Whatever it is, that tree. Mom, you want to race that tree? Like, you betcha, kiddo. And we will haul off. And I'm like, I'm still beating him, but probably not for much longer. But, you know, it's one of those things where I'm like, that's still my goal. Like, I'm not going to let you win. You know, that's where we're going to go.
Would never.
I would never.
She's not that kind of mom.
But I'm also like, I want to be able to do it with my grandkids someday. Like, now I'm doing it with my kids, and this stage is going to be, you know, in the next 10 years, they're not going to want me to race them anymore necessarily. But now it's like, okay, grandkids, you know, 15, 20 years from now, like, I want to be able to pick them up. I want to be able to carry them up the steps when they're tired or if they fell asleep on my lap or whatever. And I'm like, no, that's to me is what a fulfilling
I remember
life
thinking
is.
this past Thanksgiving I was down in Texas and we signed up for that turkey trot.
Yeah, right.
Which, you know, you always hear people joking about like, oh, you know, I hope I don't marry into a family, the kind of family that does like turkey trots on Thanksgiving. And I would have never.
Flag football on Turkey Day.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
Right?
I would have never, you know, that would have never been the thing I do on Thanksgiving morning. And, you know, now I'm like, we seeked one out, we found one, and I didn't run it, but we took our kids to do it. And just the night before when we were like going to bed early and getting ready for this thing, I'm like,
What are we doing?
well, it was just like, how crazy that, like, how did I become the kind of person who signs up for a turkey trot? And just like how cool that like my kids get to do this. And like, hopefully this isn't like a thing that they ever say like that. That's not something I do, you know, normalize it.
Oh, it's a core memory for sure. I mean, it's a different event for them, and it was the holidays to boot, and it was somewhere different, and all that. It was.
I'm a turkey trotter now.
You are a turkey trotter now.
Yes, you are. That's the correct
There we go.
Way to go, Kaylee.
Now that we've discovered she's ran multiple 5Ks.
So let's take your 8-year-old for example. In my book, I say, and I call it your wellness clock, and I walk through the sequence of when I was younger, maybe like you do with your families. My mother, Judy, would say, Neal, I want you to eat everything on your plate. And I did, right?
You're like, say less.
You know, and we weren't wealthy, and you know, we would have maybe pasta 3 times in a row, a lot of carbs in that. You know, I heard you guys talk about that in a previous episode. So it's like, all right, so I did that. So then some of us go play high school sports, and what does the coach do after you win a big game, your road game? Takes the cheese box, at least in my era, and what would they do? They go to Mickey D's or Burger King, right? And then if you're a really good athlete, you end up going to college and you have a smorgasbord, anything you could eat. So when you're 21, 22 years old, you're done with college athletics, whatever it is, you say to yourself, wow. And in my case, what I'm saying is, that was my formula for failure.
Yeah.
Because I didn't learn, right?
Yep.
So it's like, are you going to bring that when you go to your daughter's soccer match or volleyball or whatever it is, okay? All good things. What do most parents bring?
Capri
A sugar-based
Sun.
drink. Yeah. A cookie or potato chips. And you don't realize, and listen, I was speaking at Ohio University sports management program. My friend Jim Kaler at the time was there. Now he's at Cleveland State. And there were 28 students. And, they're all aspiring to be something, beyond their graduate degrees. And I said, how many of you in the afternoon fuel your body with a Gatorade or a Powerade and a bag of chips? 18 of the 28 students raised their hand.
Yeah.
So my story is transformation, but fortunately I saved my life. But for those out there that are listening, and listen, this is meant to be fun, but it's also meant to understand that you can have fun if you overcome, what I tell people is you get motivated, right? Mm-hmm. And then you get accountable, and then you become sustainable, and then you've achieved lifestyle success. Mm-hmm. That's kind of where I'm at.
Yep. And it starts with just understanding and having a general awareness of like what things are.
Yeah.
I just did a talk not very long ago at our local high school, and I kind of said the same thing to the students. I was like, who does your grocery shopping? Over the 4 different sessions, I probably had close to 100 kids, and there was maybe 2 or 3 that raised their hand that they do their own grocery shopping. And so it's through this whole process of not just the foods around them is just around them.
Yeah.
They haven't learned about anything. And, just having a general understanding of what it's like to actually have protein with, whatever it is that you're doing, and making sure that it's protein and how that needs to be important. And you can't just fuel yourself on sugar, caffeine, and chips, which is what so many of them do. And it's just, we don't have education enough to set them up for what do you do when you aren't always being told what to do anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they're in protective environments now. People are always telling our kids what to do, between going to school, coaches telling them what to do, parents. Mm-hmm. At some point, you have to think for yourself. Yeah. But we haven't given you the tools to think for yourself with regards to this area, and you learn by failing, and then it's way harder. But
absolutely, you couldn't said any better. I mean, if I tell people, especially when you're getting started, if you quit, you don't have a chance, right? Mm-hmm. And so many people at a very young age that they aren't exposed to good parents like you guys, okay? And in fact, one of the programs that I'm working with some other groups on, it's a program focused on what does a child eat before they take a test. If you test better and you learn this in elementary or middle school, then you get into a better college. I don't care if you're a student athlete or not. Doesn't matter. Right. You want a better education, you got to test better.
Yep. And
I laugh because you've seen the commercial, I'm sure. Snickers doesn't satisfy. How many moms give somebody a Snicker bar, before they test, and right in the middle of the test, they crash because there's too much sugar.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yep. Absolutely. Well, I mean, that parent education piece is a huge part of it, because what I'm learning is a lot of parents that are my generation, we had parents in like the 80s, early 70s, 80s or so, that were heavily marketed to that fats are bad, right? It was the low fat diet craze. But it's like fats aren't bad. They're actually like, you need them. And they also were around the lifting weights will make you bulky eras, right? So right now we've got a generation of parents that are also telling our kids still to this day, don't lift weights because they're going to make you bulky. Yeah. And fat's bad. I'm like, we need to break this pattern. That's not right. We know more now.
Well, listen, I love my mother. She's in heaven. So is my father. Okay. My father had cancer. My mother was a 2-time survivor, and the 3rd time, colon cancer got her. But to your point, if you don't help your children, which are your legacy, okay, and that's something else, then you end up with this. This is, I hope you could see it.
Oh, yeah.
This is my 62-inch jeans that I wore, okay? So that's what 400 pounds can look like. Again, in whether you lift weights or whatever, it doesn't matter. In that particular case, ladies, Sarah and Kaylee, I didn't fit, you'd go to a restaurant, right? And they'd say to you, the hostess would say, do you want a booth or a table? Well, I didn't fit in a booth, right? I went to go see Omar the tent maker to get those jeans, right? Where else can you get a 62-inch pair of, waist jeans, right? And then you go to a plane. How uncomfortable is it when you can't really sit in that plane? So it's like you need to, and a lot of people say, well, how much do you weigh now, Neal? And I go, you know what? Not what's important. What's important is how do you feel?
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel?
Yep.
And if you can impress that to your younger generation, is that do the things that you want to have fun, of course.
Yep.
But and we say that to our kids all the time. But at the end of the day, put yourself in a position that you can give yourself more energy. It's like, it's like in the state of Missouri, you're in the show me state when you're going for your degree, and then you get. I'm a adjunct professor at Boston College, and a lot of my students are graduates, and they're doing what they're doing. But if you don't have the nutrition, which I did not have, okay, if you don't have that, you're not going to get to the space that you really want to get to, and you deserve to get to if you put your time in.
I think it's maybe time for a little quick ad break. Follow us on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Nacho Fit Coach.
Okay, we're back.
Right.
Well, and that's like, learning to eat healthy, and even, and it's not always the most fun way to eat or whatever, but it's being, I've been watching My 600-Pound Life lately.
Oh, you
and
have?
I'm like, I have, and I'm like, that looks like a really hard way to live. It's like, choose your hard, because like you said, getting on airplanes or fitting in a restaurant booth, or like, that's not fun. That doesn't sound like
either,
fun,
no.
So it's like, choose your hard, and, no, it's not always, there's discipline and there's not fun things about.
Well, and it doesn't always have to start with your choices, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing with nutrition, is I feel like people feel like it has to be this all or nothing. Right. Like, I either have to go extreme one way, or I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing. And so, like, people also need to understand that you don't also have to just rip and replace your entire routine.
Yeah.
So before we went live, you kind of mentioned, the strategy that you started with, which was about moderation, right? So sometimes it's all a part of your journey, and it's not just linear. You're going to have like this ups and downs and whatever else, but the start does not have to be this super extreme, like now I just have this short little food list and I got to eat with it 100% of the time.
Well, not only does it not have to be, it shouldn't be.
It shouldn't be, because it's not sustainable.
Until that switch kind of flipped for me. I'm like, oh, I don't have to wake up tomorrow and change everything about my life.
No, you did like one thing at a time.
And I wasn't able to ever be successful in anything until I figured that out.
Right. Yeah. I mean, so you had a great strategy from the very beginning. You just talked about your portion control, right? So sometimes it doesn't even have to start with your choices at all, but you just have to start with something.
Well, I tell people that most of my life, my adult life, I medicated myself with the drug of choice, food, right? And I did, and obviously I'm what I was, and listen, I'm at the lowest I ever was, because I'm a big bone gentleman, is 189.4. And, a lot of people, a couple of years ago, I could really go to physical therapy. I could go to 2 Orange Theory classes and do some other stretching things that are necessary, part of the process. And I had to educate myself, like something real simple, like when you sit at a chair at your desk, right? And so many of us just get up and we're leaning forward on the front of our foot. That hurts over time. That is a detriment to your joints. I mentioned Chi running. Lisa Bozzoni, one of my running coaches, in the beginning, she taught me this. It's wrist to rib, and it's leaning forward. You got to have your core in good space. And that's kind of what I did. And it's not fast, but at the end of the day, it's finish line versus finish times. And that's kind of what it is. But I'm curious, both of you have obviously, I've heard the turkey trot story. I like that. and your half marathon story. So did you have like a fun moment or something that came along that because I had a couple, and I'll share those with you, but I'm curious about what you guys, because this is your show, your audience, and this is a neat subject, to share your accomplishment.
Oh man, a fun moment just in general, like through this whole process, or just in life. Oh man, I'm gonna think about this. I'm like, Kaylee, go first.
I don't know. As far as like, I think when I think about the things that we've kind of set out to do, we had our first 5K. That one was the funnest for me. I think where you and I ran the whole thing.
That was a fun moment.
We finished, and you raced that guy at the end. The kid.
I was not gonna let that kid beat me.
You sprinted at the end because she wasn't gonna let this teenager beat her.
I'm that way.
So that was fun. A lot of neat things have come out of just this entire experience, I think.
Yeah. I mean, because Kaylee doesn't really have experience doing anything exercise related before our podcast started. Like, that's pretty much how the podcast idea came about, was she had a lifelong life of no experiences with physical exercise.
Sheer laziness.
And so she kind of started to feel like maybe that was something in her future that she needed to start incorporating in. So she just started coming to me with different questions about things she would read about online. And so that's so her journey is pretty fresh.
Fairly, yeah.
I feel like with your experiences and stuff. I mean, I don't know. Fun moment. I think probably actually I don't know. I mean, I have a couple moments. I guess.
You were saying something a minute ago. I was on a podcast for men like me that were bigger. And these two hosts had lost a lot of weight. In fact, I started the podcast by saying, you realize the combined weight of us on the call is 400 pounds, right? We lost, right? Obviously my number was a little bigger than theirs, but it didn't matter. So I asked them, a question. I said, one of the hosts, I said, so what was your pivot point? And his teenage son was talking to his friend, and he said, oh, my dad's fat because he's lazy.
Yeah.
Right? And it's like you don't realize until something like that happens. And my family was as supportive as you can ever imagine. But I tell people, I heard, but I didn't listen.
Yeah,
sure.
And that's, I think, a standing order. I mean, listen, when I ran in San Diego, which is, I think one of their founding races,
I've ran San Diego, the rock and roll. Right.
Yes.
Yeah, I've ran the rock and roll San Diego.
All right, so you'll love this story. Okay, so it's my first one. You go through Balboa Park, you and then you go that one really monster hill.
Yep.
And then you go up, right?
Yep.
Right, you know that.
Yep.
So then you make a turn and you're going down and you're getting closer to downtown, right? So this volunteer tells me after community college or city college, whatever, the tunnel, right? Because, they put all those lights and stuff in that tunnel that you're a mile away. So I get to this situation at the end where I'm kind of, okay, I'm going to get through the tunnel. And, it's at that point, it was will versus skill.
Yep.
So I'm going to go nuts and I'm going to finish. And I see this inflatable. I think it's this finish line, right? And I run like heck, right? I get to and I see it. I go, oh my God. I just ran for a beer advertisement. It was a mix.
Like, wah, wah, wah.
So sometimes in life, you think something is the finish line. Yep. Like you start something and you want to finish, and it's not. And it really is your heart and your ability to learn new things and get better, like you both have done. And listen, kudos to both of you for coming together and giving people like me an opportunity to share a transformation. And like I always say, if it's one person or 1,000 people, it doesn't matter. I was in the feature on the front page of sports in Las Vegas in the Review Journal. This guy, Todd Dewey, did an amazing article, and people were saying things. And I said, you know what? I'm just happy that story is getting to be told so other people can realize that it's never too late to reimagine your lifestyle and to live your happiest and healthiest version of you one day at a time.
Yep, absolutely. Well, and you're absolutely right. I mean, the goals change along the way. Like whatever you think your goal is going to be, you're going to get there, and then you're going to figure out something new and a new goal, and or something else is going to turn you. I mean, that has happened to me more than once. You think you're like, this is this is where I need to be.
There is no, what if there's not going to be a day where you wake up and you're like, I did it. I did it.
I mean, because then you find something new, and like you mentioned pivot point earlier. So I can tell you the pivot point was for me. So I had graduated. I was always I was an athlete, collegiate athlete, graduated, started my first like corporate job, like my first serious corporate job. And I traveled and I was in airports and I was on the road. I lived out of a suitcase for a week at a time by myself, visiting clients, but it was all airport food, all fast food, all hotel food. Like I was not home cooking meals at all. And, when you are 24, 25, 26, I felt like I was getting away with it, right? Like, I mean, I was managing it. It was fine. It hadn't really caught up with me yet, hit 27. And what my pivot point was, I sat in the airports and I started to see people who had been, you could tell they had been like corporate travelers for probably 10, 20, 30 years. Business suits are not very forgiving, right? And you could just sit in the airport and I would watch people. And you watch the ones that life had caught up with them and they were struggling to get to their next gate. They were out of wind. They were sweating, and again, then too, in a business suit, that's not exactly what you want to be sweating in either. Right. And so, it's like I would watch and I would just see so many of those people go by, or like I would be on the shuttle to go back to my car when I got back from the airport and, people, and you could tell they were uncomfortable getting up on the shuttle bus and getting into the spot and, sitting down. And I had this moment where I was faced with what I felt like was a fork in the road. Am I going to be who I have been? Mm-hmm. Like I still identified as a collegiate athlete at that point. I'm like, I'm a busy person. I'm a body, whatever, able-bodied. Or, you know what? I just actually like my next round of business suits were that next size up.
Yeah.
Which is that the path that I'm going to keep going down? And I was like, I don't want to end up like that, So I looked at them as like a crystal ball of myself and immediately decided I need to put some structure in place around the choices. And I didn't change that part of it, but I learned, I figured out how to get smart with how I ordered at airports, the restaurants that I chose. Like I went through periods of time where Applebee's, I would look on my GPS and like 30 minutes ahead, I'd find the Applebee's on whatever the highway was. Because back then they used to have like a Weight Watchers menu and everything was cooked with low oils and they had their point system and everything. At least I knew that it was somewhat controlled, like portion controlled, calorie controlled, whatever. And I would call in instead of waiting for like McDonald's and driving through and not planning. I would look ahead, find the next Applebee's, and I would call and order a pickup, order to go. I would just pull off, I would get it, and I would keep driving. And you have to acknowledge your situation first and figure out a plan or a strategy to put something in place. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't have to be, 10,000 steps in a different direction. It can just be small, but first is that recognition, I think, to start. But
when you say that, I one of my mentors wrote a book called The Power of Who. It's more for networking and business and stuff like that. Bob Odine's the same. And bottom line is that, he spoke at an event, where I was working at St. Louis University at the time. And when I was so inspired, but at the end of the day, we've had this conversation in this podcast where I got his book, I put it in my car windshield, but I didn't do anything for like 2 years. I looked at it every day, and then I started believing, in God a little bit, and that helped a lot, I should say. And when I heard you tell what you just told the story, and maybe look up something that I refer to once in a while, it says, motion is life. Sitting still is slow death. I didn't start by running marathons. I started by walking to my mailbox without losing my breath.
Okay, so with that, we're going to take just a quick little ad break.
Hey, y'all. Thanks for listening. This is show producer, Audio Allen. While the girls are taking a break, like, follow, and subscribe. And stick around. We'll be right back.
All right, we're back, and
the Bible says that we're fearfully and wonderfully made, but we have to honor our bodies by moving them.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Well, even a strategy is park your car in the farthest stall away from the front door of the grocery store. Okay, just start there.
Yeah.
You know, it just,
I think so many people don't realize how easy it is just to
those simple little changes,
things
and they
that,
add up.
You know, walk around the block, and then if that was hard, walk around the block again the next day, and keep doing that till that's not hard anymore. But it's like, yeah, you don't have to come out the gate running marathons to make a difference.
No,
You can if you want to.
you know,
I mean,
and sometimes you'll get into a situation like in 2017 was the first Las Vegas at night marathon. And I've learned that in the beginning, at least for me, in the beginning, they did it during the day. And then when they moved it to night, and then now it's only one of two events, Formula One is the other one, that they closed the strip. And it starts at 4:30. And like I said, it's crazy and whatever. But, you know, I remember 30 days before that race, that's when they had unfortunate situation, murders, and, you know, and it was scary, you know, a lot of security and whatever. So we get into this scenario, and I'm thinking, man, I've never been in this space before, right? I've graduated a little bit, and I'm going to PR. So I signed a pacer, right? And I'm with the pacer. And about the 8th mile, I got trucked. I just got knocked to the ground. I was all over the place. And I lost my pacing group. They were too far ahead of me. And it hit me. Why do I do this? Right?
yeah.
You know,
Yep.
you know, okay, the heck with the PR,
Yeah.
right? Go have fun.
Yep.
And I'm in Vegas on the strip, right? So at the end of the day, I also said, wait a minute, all these first responders that are along the way. So instead of like really, and then I was better than I am today, but you know, I was a younger buck, right? And I crisscrossed.
Yeah.
And I would go up to the first responders and I'd say, thanks for your service.
Yeah.
And you'd be shocked how many of those people were like startled that somebody would say that, you know, in all due respect. And so, yeah, I got a medal. You know, I got plenty of medals here behind me. But at the end of the day, it really isn't about that. It's about the camaraderie that happens initially in the corral. And then you see some of the other people that are, why are they doing it? Well, they're celebrating their lives.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that's what you guys have done. And now you're taking it to the podcast world, and hopefully more people like you will keep sharing, you know, that it is never too late to reimagine your lifestyle and live a life that maybe you never thought you could.
Yep. Nope. That's absolutely true. I love that saying. It definitely kind of just encompasses so much about, really, it's just those little things. And it can make a big difference, big change, impact it. I mean, one of my core memories from from my full marathon in San Diego was there was this 80-year-old woman, and she had a shirt that she said, "Today is my 80th birthday." You know, and so she was just happily truckling along. Like it was, you know, that realizing that road races are not the winners, 27,000 of like the winner stereotype. You know, it is regular people just going out and doing something fun. Oh, so many of the people walk the whole thing. You know, that was, I mean, I felt like probably a third of the race that I did, that was about 27,000 people too, just came out of the gate walking the whole way. It's not about running yourself into the ground. You can have some fun with it, and it's a really good time.
I mean, listen, the first corral of the elite athletes, I get that.
For sure.
You know,
right.
And they're doing it for a reason. They want to qualify for Boston or New York or whatever it is. Okay. But, you know, you're right.
Most people are just doing it for fun. So just do something for fun. Things are in moderation. You can make small changes. You know, Neal did it over the course of, how many years did it take for you to lose your weight?
Now, that's kind of the crazy story. So this more recent, you know, story over 10 and a half years. So my pivot point was October 12th, 2015. That was when Little Max, my guardian angel, said, you know, are you Santa Claus? Okay. Prior to that, at Orange Theory, I failed. I went 5 weeks. I didn't understand nutrition. I said that a couple times during this podcast. So I then proceeded in less than 2 years to lose 199 pounds.
Wow. It's
crazy. It was a miracle. And before that, I was in St. Louis and working at SLU in administration, athletic administration. And I walked every day around my son Logan's high school track. I didn't miss a day. I started getting it because one of the big words that I also tell people is show up.
Yeah.
Show up and do the work, and show that commitment,
Yeah.
that all of us have within. I tell people, and maybe you like this, is that, how many of you have seen a miracle? And then I say, well, think about it. How many people have you met that have lost 199 pounds, survived sudden cardiac death, and recently conquered cancer? I said, I think I'm a miracle. But you know what? Everyone in this podcast should learn and understand that, truthfully, everyone is a miracle waiting to be unfolded. So if you've seen the movie Bruce Almighty,
Mm-hmm.
okay,
Yep.
So what does Morgan Freeman playing God tell Jim Carrey? If you want to see a miracle, you got to be the miracle, right? and so, today, transformation, our main subject, can lead you to so many miracles that it's like, your story with your 8-year-old, or, the turkey trot family story. I mean, you don't experience those things if you don't realize what it takes to get there.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, it's like every bite that we take is either medicine or poison. What are you feeding yourself? I had to stop by treating my body like a garbage dump. That's what it was, a garbage dump. Boom, put it in. God has already given us the best nutrition plan in the world. It's called real food.
Mm-hmm. Yep, for sure. We had a guest on last season, and he had talked a lot about that same thing. I mean, that was his whole kind of stance with his program that he did was food versus poison.
Well, and that there is
real
no,
food.
There is no gray area, and I think that's what people don't realize. It is either,
Yeah, it's either man-made
yeah,
poison,
yeah,
or real food. There's not really an in between.
not really.
Not really. I mean, it is what it is. It is what it is. Well, Neal, I've really enjoyed talking to you. This is really great, but I will definitely tell you that every time you kind of like move on your screen and I continue to see the University of Miami logo. I mean, we're sitting in Nebraska right now. And so my childhood was remembering the Cornhuskers playing Miami in football. And so
I was at that game.
I'm like,
It rained that day in the Orange Bowl. I was there.
I am like, ever since that moment, watching the Orange Bowl, watching Nebraska play Miami, and I just feel like there was years where it was like they were the top two teams. Like, I mean, I've really enjoyed this conversation with you, but seeing that logo on the screen has just kind of made me a little bit like, oh, man. A Miami guy.
Let me say this to you. The women's basketball coach at your school, Amy Williams, is phenomenal. Okay. And she was at South Dakota when we worked there. And the core and the culture of what she found as far as student athletes, her coaches, and the culture that she built, they won the WNIT. And, Nebraska is her alma mater. So, she's been there 5 or 6 years. She's very successful, whatever. And I've been through that many, many times. If truth be known, when I moved, as I told you before the podcast started, when we moved, because we had to, we're victims of identity theft. That's hard. You get as low as you can get, right? And we did it the hard way. We didn't do bankruptcy. We did smart things, but it took time. Right? Just like this particular transformation, it took time. Now, granted, I've been on this journey until my recent cancer. I was in a good, stable space, and now, like I said, third time around, I'm going to knock on it and do what I do. But the core of your development, I tell people, it starts with your attitude, and attitude's like a flat tire. If you don't fix it, you don't go very far. And in my particular case, I had a flat tire. So when I moved to South Dakota, it wasn't like the greatest. I mean, it's a very good program, athletic program, but the people made a difference. So where you are, it may not be Miami warm, or it may not be Arizona warm, but the heart of the people that you surround yourself with is a big part of the success that helped me. Starting with my wife, Laura, my son, Justin, and Logan. And then, the people at USD, really made a difference for me. So I've been to your great campus. I mean, many times. Yeah. And I heard, your story, and when I listened about, your aspiration to get in Nebraska, and something else came along, and those are all good things. We all have our stories.
Yep.
But, who you surround yourself with is important. And that's the mistake that I made, is that I always thought I had to do it by myself. And that's not true.
No. That community makes a huge difference. Mm-hmm. And honestly, like, if you don't have people around you that are supportive of you, it's really hard to be successful if you can't get around people that do support you.
Yeah,
I think we've talked about how it's like adult bullying is live and well, and it's always food related. Like, just eat it. It's fine. But which Kaylee's been a victim of that. It's fine. So anyways, but yeah, this has been great. Well, it's been so nice to meet you. I've loved learning more about you, kind of your story and everything. So we will definitely have to stay connected and
to watch and keep an eye on what you're doing.
Yep. And we'll share the little taco recipe because that looked delicious that you shared with us.
Yep. I'm going to make
good.
That looked amazing. So we'll be sure and share that along. And if you want to find Neal, we'll link all of his information in our show notes that you can get connected with him. You can watch his journey. You can see a little bit more about him. Learn more about his books, whatever it is that you do. There we go. We got your cover. I love it.
It's on Amazon.
It's on Amazon. Perfect. So we've got a book you can connect with him on.
What's the book called?
What's the title?
Never Too Late.
Never Too Late.
It is Never Too Late. I love that. That's perfect. So we will make sure that people can find you.
For sure.
We'll link it all
Thank
up.
you.
So we appreciate your time.
Honor, so thank you for the opportunity.
Anytime. We'd love to chat with you again.
Okay, well, we'll make that happen.
Awesome.
Keep doing what you're both are doing, and it inspires people like me to want to be on this show. So let's do it again. But more importantly, keep that family thing together, right?
Awesome.
That is the coolest thing that you're doing.
Thank you. Nacho Nation's alive and well.
All right.
All right. Well, thanks again. We appreciate you, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Very good. Thank you both.
Thanks, Neal. All right. Bye. Thanks for listening. Be sure to head over to our Instagram at Nacho Fitness Coach and let us know how you feel about the topic. Do you love it or hate it?
Also, don't forget to hit that subscribe or follow button wherever you're listening. And if you like our podcast, leave us a rating. See you next time.
You've been listening to Euphony Innovatives Sonified.